Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Midnight Requiem. Today we will be covering top 10 unusual deaths.
Albert Decker, 62, died from autoerotic asphyxiation. Character and actor and politician Albert Decker was found dead in 1968 in his home. He was naked, kneeling in the bathtub with a noose tightly wrapped around his neck and looped around the shower curtain rod. He was blindfolded, his wrists were handcuffed. There was a ball gag in his mouth, and two hypodermic needles were inserted in one arm. His body was covered in explicit words and drawings in red lipstick. Autoerotic asphyxiation is an intentional restriction of oxygen to the brain for sexual arousal. Keith Reef died from electrocution while playing electric guitar. Keith Reef was an English musician well known as the lead singer of the psychedelic band The Yardbirds. Almost all sources, including Wiki, say he died in his basement. He stood on a gas pipe, and because the guitar was ungrounded, the electrical current resulted in severe shock to his body. Because the Reef family remained private about his death, a rumor began to grow that the singer was foolishly playing an electric guitar in the bathtub. Adora Duncan's death was caused by her long silk scarf. She was an American dancer and often cited as the creator of the modern dance. She was a passenger in the car when her long scarf draped around her neck got entangled around one of the vehicle's open-spoked wheels and rear axle. She was hurled in an extraordinary manner from an open automobile and instantly killed by the force of her fall to the stone pavement. She was almost decapitated by the sudden tightening of the scarf around her neck. Tennessee Williams choked on a bottle cap. Thomas Lanier Tennessee Williams III was an American playwright along with Eugene O'Neill and Arthur Miller. He is considered among the three foremost playwrights of 20th century American drama. He choked on a bottle cap, which he had removed from a bottle of eye drops and placed it in his mouth. The bottle cap slipped down his throat as he tilted his head back to place the eye drops in his eyes. After his death, drugs were found in his room, and there were more suspicions that this contributed towards his death. John Bonham drank 40 shots of vodka, vomited, and choked on his own vomit. In 24 hours, Bonham drank around 40 shots, 1 to 1.4 liters of 40% ABV vodka, after which he vomited and choked on. Tycho Brahe's death was caused by his good manners that prevented him from going to the bathroom in time. He was a 16th century Danish astronomer whose research helped Sir Isaac Newton devise the theory of gravity. He died because he didn't make it to the bathroom in time. In that society, it was considered an insult to leave the table before the banquet was over. Brahe had too much alcohol but was too polite to ask to be excused. He instead allowed his bladder to burst, which killed him slowly and painfully over the next 11 days. That's crazy, that poor polite fellow. Sir William Payne Galloway, death by turnip. Sir William Payne Galloway was a British member of Parliament in the late 19th century. Sir William, like many other British MPs, loved to go hunting throughout the year. On one unfortunate hunting trip, Sir William crossed through a turnip field where he fell and sustained significant internal injury from one particular large turnip. He died of his injuries just a few days later. Xerxes, death by laughter. Laughing is all fun and game until it kills you. Xerxes, a Greek painter in the 5th century BC, had his last laugh after observing his own painting of Aphrodite, allegedly an elderly woman who had commissioned the painting for her home but decided to model for it herself. After the painting of this elderly woman as Aphrodite was completed, Xerxes observed his work and laughed so hard that he died from it. Rasputin. On the night of December 29, 1916, Yosipov and Pavlovich lured Rasputin to Mokia Palace in St. Petersburg. The would-be killers first gave the monk food and wine laced with cyanide. However, when Rasputin seemingly failed to respond to the poison, they shot him at close range and left him for dead. In spite of these murderous measures, Rasputin revived shortly thereafter and made an attempt to flee the palace grounds, only to be intercepted by his assailants, who shot him again viciously, beat him. Then they bound Rasputin, who was remarkably still alive, and threw him into the freezing Neva River. His battered body was found several days later, and it was reported that there was water in his lungs, indicating that he finally died by drowning. According to legend, the Mad Monk's impressive unit was either cut off by his killers or stolen from the morgue by an old flame. Somehow, a group of Russian women living in Paris believed the sacred dong had made its way to them, and they worshipped whatever it was they had until his daughter supposedly showed up to reclaim it. Eventually, the proprietors aren't saying how, it completed its trip around the continent and ended up back in Russia at the Museum of Russian Erotica, where it remains on display. Elvis Presley died while pooping too hard. Elvis was sitting on the toilet, straining very hard to have a bowel movement, a maneuver that put a great amount of pressure on his heart and aorta. Thus, he likely died of massive heart attack and keyed over onto the floor. But Elvis was not suffering from garden variety constipation at the time of his death. The constipation upset him quite a bit because Elvis thought that he could handle almost anything. He thought he was really a man's man, and he wasn't going to let something like this. He thought that this was a sign of weakness, and he wasn't going to be weak. Nicopoulopoulos said, and it's not the kind of thing you table talk back in the 60s and 70s. You didn't talk about constipation much. You didn't hear people complaining about it, or saying what they did or how much trouble they had with it. In 1975, the primary treatment for this kind of problem involved removing part of the colon known as a colonoscopy, and at the time, Dr. Nick was in talks with a surgeon at the University of Memphis to perform the procedure. However, Presley's ego got in the way. He would get embarrassed. He had accidents on stage. He'll have to change clothes and come back because of the way we were trying to treat his constipation, Nicholas said. So if they had done the colonoscopy, then he'd probably still be here, but it wasn't acceptable treatment at the time. Now the treatment is short. Nicholas also believes that Presley's prominent weight gain in the years prior to his death was not a result of overeating or eating the wrong foods, as they initially assumed. The doctors revealed that Elvis' bloated appearance was due to his severe constipation. Hope you found this video interesting, my good beings. Now remember, my good beings, be nice and caring to each other. Please like the video and subscribe. Thank you. Have a wonderful night.